minimum requirement for back when I was hired in, which was back in '96, where you had to have at least like 20, 25 years, which is something called a pension, which is pretty much non-existent nowadays for a lot of things. But back then, local law enforcement was trying to compete with GM, Ford, Chrysler, and so they try to keep up with pensions and insurance, and nowadays it's kind of the thing, but it's kind of a lost thing. For me, I went to Ferris State University, where I received my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Something about becoming a police officer, some of the things that are requirements and stuff like that, you have to become certified as a police officer so you can become certifiable, which is what Ferris State University provided. So for me, when I graduated from college, I was certifiable, which meant that once I got hired, from a police department, I could be a certified police officer. And back then it was called MOLATSI. Nowadays it is called MCOLS. And that is the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. So I kind of printed out some things about what it takes now to kind of get started in law enforcement. Some of the things that you have to do, it's at least be 18 years of age, be a U.S. citizen, have a high school diploma or a GED, have a valid driver's license, no criminal offenses that are disqualifying, i.e. like felony type things. So anything like a felony. I would also caution anything like with drugs, alcohol, they will all look at that. It doesn't mean it's going to disqualify you, but for each one. When I was actually applying, there were probably for each agency about 500 applicants. Now, because of not a lot of people want to do this job as much, we are struggling not only in Michigan, but throughout the United States, trying to get people to want to be able to do this job and stuff. And it's certainly going to be a calling. And it was, and as our daughter can attest, there's a lot of ups and downs about the job. I mean, and, as being a police officer, it's an identity that basically your identity has to be in Christ. We do everything for the glory of Christ. And so if you go into this job thinking, oh, I'm just going to write a bunch of tickets or arrest a bunch of people, and your attitude is the wrong attitude, that you don't have an attitude for Christ, I mean, we see what happens when you don't have that and stuff. And are there bad apples in law enforcement? Just like everything, yes. And we can see how bad people can do a lot of bad things, because with this, job, it's a high responsibility. So you are out there with a gun, with a taser, mace, pepper spray. I mean, there's a big responsibility with this job. So, good moral character, normal hearing. I'm just going to continue some of the things. Normal hearing and vision corrected, no color blindness. That was something I didn't even realize, but when I was going through this school and training, all of a sudden some of the guys found out later, which I didn't realize, that they were actually colorblind. So that is something that can actually disqualify as well. To be a police officer, obviously 18, and with that MCOL standard, I'm just going to read a little bit about that. And this is for Michigan. Licensing as a law enforcement officer in Michigan must be approved through the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards, which is MCOLS. This happens when the following two requirements are met by the candidate. Compliances with MCOLS minimum selection standards, which includes satisfactory completion of a basic police academy or recognition of prior training and experience, and employment with law enforcement agency or law enforcement officer. Previously licensed officers in Michigan or from another state who are seeking re-licensings are directed to the MCOLS for training and stuff like that. So if you came from another state or something like that, a lot of times military personnel are good candidates and stuff like that we end up hiring and stuff. Usually most police agencies require a 2-year degree, not all. I know like the Detroit Police Department, they don't require a 2-year associate's degree. A lot of times they will just take high school. Our police department with Waterford, you had to have a minimum of a 2-year degree. It doesn't necessarily have to be criminal justice, but it's probably a good thing to have it. And then once you get the 2-year degree, that's actually when you would start an academy. Now, some of the different academies can be like, there's down in Waterford area, there's like Oakland Police Academy. There's one actually in Fenton that I wrote down and stuff like that. That's off Mott Community College. That's also part of it. And that's at the regional, it's the Mott Community College Law Enforcement Regional Training Academy in Fenton, and it's called LORTA. And basically it's about approximately anywhere from 19 to 20 weeks for that academy and stuff. And approximate cost is anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000. Now, you can get hired at a police department, like say the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, Genesee County Sheriff's Department, and they will actually, later on, you don't need to go to the academy, but you can just get hired to work in the jail. They later on can then just send you through the academy if you end up working on the road and stuff, depending on what you would want to do and stuff. Things that I like about with the sheriff departments, things about with the state police. The state police, you actually have to also go through their academy, which is like about 21 to 22 weeks. And then from there, but the nice thing is there's a lot of different things that you can do within the agency. Our agency, when I hired in, was almost 100. When I retired, we were down to about 50-something. Some of the things that I did as a patrol officer, I was a school liaison officer. I worked as a motor officer, so I get to ride the Harleys, which is probably one of my favorite things. And then when I retired, I was a detective for the last 4 years, which was kind of a grueling thing. You don't realize, the pen and the reports and stuff like that. You guys watch, who's watched like the cop shows, right? You always watch them and you see the arrest, right? What don't you see? Is the next 3 or 4 hours of paperwork that you're doing. So, I mean, education is the biggest thing I always tell kids and stuff like that. If you're thinking about getting in law enforcement, education, because you don't think about all the reports and stuff like that, but it is definitely an important thing and skill to have. That was probably my biggest surprise of how much I realized, and seeing dead bodies. I caution anybody who may have like a weak stomach and stuff like that, because there's going to be times where you're going to be in those scenes where somebody has died, and that body may be a day old and maybe 6 months old, and the smell is just so. That's the hard part about the job. Probably the hardest thing that I found over my career is dealing with children, crimes against children. That was probably the hardest thing for me, is to see how somebody could inflict pain on a child and stuff, whatever that is. So that was the hardest thing. So for a mental thing, I mean, you hear about a lot of people, and it doesn't necessarily mean just police alone, but a lot of times officers will go to drinking or drugs or anything just to kind of ease their pain and stuff. And it's true. I mean, that's the reality of it and stuff. And my strength came through Christ and stuff, and that's where I found my strength. Prior to becoming, actually, God worked a pretty good thing, because throughout my life, growing up, I wasn't a Christian. I didn't grow up in the church. I started going to Ferris State University, and it was my sophomore year where I had a friend that invited me to one of the youth groups, and that is where I found, or God just drew me to himself when I was 21 years old, which is where I met my wife, Paula, and we are 25 years later. So, but obviously God had a plan, and it was just amazing to see his hand in everything throughout my career, because you make a difference in people's lives, especially if you're a Christian in law enforcement. I mean, it's a rarity, and it's hard, because you have to battle everything, because guys are going to be doing things. They're going to be doing things you're not going to be doing. And that's the reality of going to the bars, hanging out, and doing whatever. So it's a hard job. And then being a Christian to boot is even harder. But you know what? I can tell you how many times that there'd be an incident, whatever it would be, and obviously we can just stop anytime and just say, Lord, be with that situation, whatever that situation is. And I can't tell you how many times throughout my career where somebody would just say, you're just different. Why are you treating me like that? And I would just, and I can tell you, and especially if they're in the cop car, I would have usually like K-Love, usually a radio station playing, and I said, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? I said, do you believe in God? And I would just have a conversation with people in the back of the patrol car while I've arrested them and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's just, it's just what God has led me to be, and that was where I served, because this job is about service. It's not about you. I mean, it's about what you can do for your community and stuff like that. So it isn't about me as far as that goes. So it's a hard job, but it's a life of service, and it's so rewarding. I mean, I am very appreciative of it, and so thankful that I was able to do that and stuff like that. So, but I definitely was ready to be done after the 25 years. It definitely wears on you. So, and there's a reason why most law enforcement officers get out, usually 20, 25 years, because this is an old man thing. So, people chasing after kids after, 50, 55. Yeah, I have stories of where it's like you'd see a young kid take off running over the fence. You're like, wow, he can run fast. And you're like, I just had dinner or had just had lunch. I'm like, I'm not chasing after him. So, but, but I really, really enjoyed the job on that aspect of it. Some of the other standards, like if you're thinking about getting into it, that you guys can you can go on these websites. I just kind of went on there for that MCOLS, which is that Michigan Commission at Law Enforcement Standards. And there's the things, if you're thinking about it, if you're interested, you guys can start to look at what are some of the prerequisites and stuff like that for like the workouts and stuff like that. They were different for when I went through there. When I did it, it was like a half-mile run in a certain time, as many push-ups as you could do in a minute, as many sit-ups as you could do in a minute. There was a hand strength test. There was a wall climb where you had to jump over like a 7-foot wall in a matter of time and then grab like a dummy that was 150 pounds and drag it within so many feet in so much time. And then there was another carry that you had to do and so on. Now they've kind of changed it up a little bit. There's like 3 things they measure it on. It's quite not as bad. So there's like push-ups in a minute, sit-ups, and then they do like a jumping up, and then the half-mile run. So I just kind of said, for the age group from 18 to 29, there's a vertical jump, and for males, it's 17.5 inches. So you got to jump up, so basically in a position like this, and you would jump up like this, and they have like some Velcro thing that you would attach on there to see how far you can go, and it would have to be 17.5 inches. For males, and then for the females in that same age group, 18 to 29, it's 11 inches. The next one is the sit-ups in 1 minute. The minimum is 32 for sit-ups in 1 minute for a male. And then for the female, it is 28. And then for push-ups for the male, for that same age group, it's 30 push-ups in a minute. And then for the women, it's 7. You don't have to do as many for that.
I could do 7 push-ups.
I was surprised at how much of a difference, because I was like, wow, that is quite a difference. Because I think for me, the minimum when I had, and they scored them differently, it was like 32 was the minimum, but then you got points for everything else that you did. So when I did mine, like the push-ups, I did mine like 53 or 54 I did in a minute. So, and then there's what is called a half-mile shuttle run. So, and it's from like a cone to cone, and that is required for the male, 4 minutes and 29 seconds for a half-mile run. And then for the females, it is 5 minutes and 35 seconds. So you're kind of going basically from cone to cone, and they set it up for like an 88 type foot thing, and it's like 13, I think it's like 13 times back and forth like that. So that kind of gives you an idea of the physical. Plus, when you end up getting into law enforcement, if that's a career that you end up going, once you get a conditionary offer, that police department, of course, is going to be doing a background check on you guys. There's going to be a psychological test. You will go and take that psychological test. You will get interviewed by a psychiatrist and stuff like that, because they want to make sure that the right people get in there. Back when I was starting, it took about 6 or 7 months to get hired. So that was the process back then. Now it can still take that, but departments, because they're trying to go a little bit quicker, because there's so many people who are actually retiring, they're trying to get those guys in. So they'll do a background check. And I was actually a background investigator, and there is like several pages. They're asked all kinds of stuff about, your social work, who your families are, what do you do, all of your jobs. So just remember, the jobs you do now as a kid or as a teenager can affect the jobs later on. Not only in law enforcement, but for anything. Anything that you post on media, we're checking. And so then we interview, we bring you in, and then we go out, we go talk to your employers, your families, your friends, neighbors, all those things are, what kind of neighbor is this person? Because we want to know, what are you like? And we find out. And if you think you lie about something, don't think, we will find out. So you got to be honest. So, and just say, hey, this is what I did, and it was something that was stupid, as a kid. So, and we understand. We were all there. So, is there kind of any questions that you guys have or anything? Yeah.
Did you ever get seriously injured on one of the
Nothing too serious. No. The worst, I probably more just like when I would try to having to wrestle with somebody in arrest and stuff. There was a few times where I twisted my knee and stuff like that. I personally never had that happen. There was many, in shooting, I never shot anybody throughout my career, if that question may come up. I pulled out my gun many of times. There's times that my family doesn't even know all the incidents that were really close. I don't share that. So my own wife and daughter does not even know all those things, so I don't share them. So. So there can be like administrative positions. So that would include, can be like the chief, there's like the captains and stuff, and and then there is patrol division, and that's the patrol officers that you see out and about and stuff like that. That's the heartbeat of the police department, is the patrol division. I mean, that is where it is. I mean, because you're in the community, you're the one making the difference. You're the one who impacts the community, right? They're who you first see, and you're the one impacting. So that frontline police officer, as we see, right? We see it every day, something on the news. If something bad happens, who is it? It's usually the patrol officer on the scene and stuff like that. It's good or bad, right? So then you'll have K-9 positions. We had a K-9 unit, and those are also the same guys who are usually on the patrol division. Depending on like sheriff departments and stuff, they have Marine patrol as well during the summer and stuff like that. I know Oakland County Sheriff, I'm sure like with Genesee County, the same thing. Only reason I know like a lot of the Oakland County stuff, because Waterford was where I worked down there, so. And that was within Oakland County. There is also the Detective Bureau, and then there are also like school liaison officers that we have and stuff like that. So and there's a lot of different divisions and stuff, and you can actually, bureaus, and you can kind of check, especially like if you're the state police. I mean, you can kind of, and if you wanted to be a state police and be up in the UP, that'd be kind of a nice thing, I think.
Right, that's what I said.
Yeah, so,
Up north would be
yeah.
a great place to be.
yeah, so. Absolutely, yes. So it is definitely, because I think you get a lot of people who end up becoming in the federal agents. And actually, you can actually, some of the federal jobs, I would even recommend, even if it's something like that, you wanted to go that route. There are a ton of fed jobs that you can kind of, once you get your degree, depending on what you want to do, for that, you can actually go. I mean, it definitely can be a stepping point for you, but you can also find a ton of federal jobs right out of college or something like that, and that can actually be a stepping stone as well. And so there's like crime scene investigators. That could be like another bureau too. I forgot about, like the Oakland County Sheriff Department, MSP State Lab. They're the ones who do all like the DNA testing, all of that stuff. Like the last biggest case I had as a detective, and you know, these are guys that were your age, 17 and 18 years old, and they were arguing over a new boyfriend was dating, and the ex-boyfriend was upset that his ex-girlfriend was now dating somebody, so they were hashing back and forth on the phone. Well, they said, hey, come on over to my house, let's fight. Well, instead of coming over to the house to fight, they ended up bringing AK-47 and 9mm. The guys who were at the house, there was about 5 or 6 of them, came outside thinking they were going to fight, and they showed up in a car. Ended up being like basically a drive-by shooting. They shot up the house. The guy who they were trying to shoot, he got shot twice with the AK, one in the couple here in the shoulder, one here in the hip. And then there's like 3 or 4 other that were outside. And it's a miracle that nobody else got shot outside. There was like 3 or 4 cars out in the driveway. They actually took a lot of the bullets. There were several that went into the home. They actually unfortunately shot and killed a dog that was inside the house. There was an aunt and her a little child that was like 5 or 6 years old inside the house. There was a bullet casing that came within about 10 feet from them. That case is actually still going. It hasn't settled in court yet. So and you look back and they were on videos, you know, parading with these handguns and stuff like that. And what made me think of that was the whole DNA, because they had their phones with them. We were able to Google, because we found that they were actually there on scene. We ended up recovering both the guns. Their fingerprints were on both the guns. Their DNA was on both the guns. The one guy still is adamant he wasn't there, but I'm like, his phone with the Google search warrant, because we got a ton of search warrants on this, showed he was there right at the exact same time of the shooting. His fingerprint was on the gun that we recovered. We actually did with the Oakland County Sheriff Department's crime scene lab. They actually showed that the casings that we recovered was the same gun that was fired along with the AK-47 that was recovered, with all the casings and stuff to show that. And our victim actually, even though he was kind of shady, he originally first said he didn't know who it was because he wanted to take his own revenge on it. He ended up finally saying it was I know who it was, and it was all these, and he actually identified him. So they're looking at going away for life, and they were 17 and 18 years old.
So the main victim, you said, who was shot in the shoulder, did he survive?
He did, yep. So they were ended up being non-threatening, but he's crippled for life now. Because it like basically took his whole hip, and so he has to walk with a cane or that limp now, and so he can't do anything. I know he was like getting into professional boxing and stuff and that, and he's done. So yeah, and that's what some of the other people said. Yeah, they're like, yeah, they didn't want to fight him because he was, yeah. So, but they brought guns, unfortunately, and.
Are you even sure at this point how many people were involved in who was in the cars?
Yeah, I know so I know the 2 shooters who were in the car, and there happened to be like 2 other people in the car. They were thinking they were going there as a fight, because one was like 16. He was scared to death. He actually came forward about maybe 2 months later after the incident happened, scared to death. And his whole mom didn't even know that this all happened. So, but he was shaking. He was thinking they were going to be coming after him, and that's why he didn't want to say anything. somebody's life is over. I mean, look at, at that age, the choices that we make.
I have a question with the temperature right now of
Yeah.
like police. Do you think, like, I know Flint at one time they did, like they had their own academy set up and they were taking, applications from people right from the city of Flint to try to boost up their police,
Yeah.
presence. Do you think that with not a lot of people coming to go into criminal justice, do you think other police departments would be doing something similar, where they're maybe not requiring the education as much because, like you said, the numbers are down so much from 150, or I feel like the numbers
Yeah.
are way down.
Yeah, and they do actually end up taking people who are less qualified. They still have to, pass a background drug test out. But back when I hired on, I mean, there was like things like if you had a drunk driving on if everything was all equal on both sides, and I had a drunk driving and this guy didn't, guess who's going to get hired? Now it's like we are struggling. I mean, we have anywhere from, depending on each agency, but just for our agency alone, like I said, when I hired in '96, it was 500 applicants. Now we're having about 30 applicants, 40. And then you take those who can't pass the test, and then they interview, and you're left with about 10 to 15 after that. And then when you do a background check, so we end up down to about, less than 10 candidates sometimes that actually we're looking at possible. And then they may end up taking another job somewhere else or whatever. But they definitely are looking at trying to, within like a community like that. But it's still, I mean, you still have to pass certain requirements and stuff like that. But yeah, they try to get those within. I mean, it's definitely not an easy job. And there's times where I'm thinking, man, who'd want to do this job nowadays, especially for, the hatred. But, I mean, our department now, we all have like the video cams on our chest and stuff like that. So all the road guys all have those on there and stuff. And there was, it's like, I was never afraid to ever have anything like that because I knew how I behaved, but it's just, and it's actually protected officers. In fact, I know there was a Detroit shooting a couple years ago, and the whole community, and when all this was kind of going around, and there was a shooting, and everybody was saying that the officer shot an unarmed guy. Well, Detroit Police Department, they had video, because the guy had his own video cam on, and it showed that the guy was not, or he was armed. He actually produced and pointed the gun at the officers in the crowd, and so it was a good shoot, and they immediately released that to show, hey, this was a good shoot, and stuff to stop from that. So I find the cameras and all of those actually help law enforcement than they hurt. I think it's a better thing, so.
Kind of off that, as far as I'm sure there are a lot of rules you have to follow. At what point is it safe or legal for an officer to open fire on an assailant or someone like that?
If you believe that your life is endangered, if you believe that imminent danger and stuff like that right there, if you believe that there is a imminent danger of a person who is fleeing, like if this person just shot and killed 3 people right in front of you and he's got this gun in his hand and he starts to run, that is justifiable, or for the protection and life of another person. So if somebody's pointing a gun at you and your life is in imminent danger, that's where you are able to, and justified and stuff like that.
So you wouldn't have to wait for someone to take the first shot?
No, no. You never, when you see all of those, I can tell you through training and stuff, guess what? Even if you had your hand like this, and I had my gun like this, and you would win every time bringing this up. I could not, my reaction time is not fast enough. The brain, so when you shoot, and you're like this, I'm gonna shoot you. When you go like this, you're gonna shoot me every time. I can't, even if I'm like this, I can't react fast enough. And in training, I've got, and I can testify to that, and stuff like that. And it's kind of like the whole, there's different rules on like the 21 rule type thing, where if somebody's got like a knife, they can be within 21 feet. before you can pull out your gun, or actually that your brain conceives that something's happened. He's coming at me, he's got a knife. I have to now react that he's got a knife in his hand. I got to pull this gun out, react, and go like that. By that time, he's there within 21 feet with a knife or bat or something like that. But yeah, so the whole, if somebody, yeah, so if you could be doing like this, it could be a suicidal guy like this, I'm going to shoot myself, and then he ends up doing this onto you, and you can't react fast enough. So, unfortunately, and that's the hardest part about the job, you know, and it's the scariest part about the job are things like that. And I'm thankful I was never in a situation completely like that, but there are plenty of people. If somebody, you know, when somebody is pointing a gun at you and you're yelling, drop the gun, there is no, you should already be shooting. Yeah, so, because otherwise you're, you know, yeah. Yeah, exactly, so there is no such thing as warning shots. We don't shoot for warning shots. We don't shoot at the ground. We don't shoot at their leg. You actually, if you're shooting somebody, it's to stop that imminent threat and that danger right now. So it's in the chest area, yeah. And we're not we're not. When you watch the movies and all these shooting out the cars and the car tires, I mean, that doesn't happen. So it's in the movies that it happens. So Hollywood, it happens a lot. So.
And just one more thing, kind of along similar lines. As far as like marksmanship training in police academy, like what was the requirements for passing the marksmanship portion of your training?
I mean, as long as they had it within a scale. So I would have to go back, and it will show on there. Trying to say, there is like a silhouette, and you have like different stages. So you would have to shoot within the silhouette markings. You would have, the first one would be like, say, 3 shots in 4 seconds. And then there would be like another one where it would be 2 shots in 2 seconds. So you might be from the ready position. And then you're going to do like a behind a barricade. And you would do, say, like from 2 different barricades. So you would kind of do this and maneuver. And those are the different things that are the requirements to be able to pass. If any of your rounds go off the silhouette, within that silhouette, it's a fail. So just one, it's an automatic fail.
So
Yeah.
you missed.
So, but then you're also allowed, to, like for our department, for requiring for us to qualify every time, which was like every quarterly, if you failed like one time, then you had 2 more chances on that, yeah. And if you failed, basically that, if you're having a bad day or something, the department, the firearms training guys would come help you out and say, hey, what's going on or whatever, so. I don't think, nobody ever really, once you get past that point, I mean, so,
Right.
but yeah.
So you're saying if you missed, you would have 2 more chances to redo that entire stage?
Yeah, for us, for qualifying and stuff like that. But for part of the academy and stuff, yeah, you would have to, so to be able to pass, though, you would definitely have to be within the silhouette of it and stuff like that. And there's probably in videos, if you go on there, firearms training for academy and stuff, and you can actually go on there, watch, and see what those requirements would be. So, any other questions? All right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Becker. We
Yep.
appreciate you very much.
Yep.
We have thank you cards for you.
Oh,
And then we
welcome.
can unhook you.